What's going on, guys? So I'm going to cut straight to it with this video because you are looking at a really cool brand of electric bike that has kind of taken YouTube by storm, and pretty much any of your recreational channels that feature bike content at all, or even RV content, has probably reviewed these electric bikes. But I'm going to go over them in a little bit different way, and hopefully one that might make it a little bit unique and interesting to follow. So hang tight, I'll be right back. Alright, so what you were looking at in front of you are the two flavors that Lectric offers their new XP 2.0 bike in. First of all is their standard folding frame, which is right here. You can see that the frame is a bit higher than the one behind it, and the one right here is their step-through frame. So under what circumstances may you want one over the other? Well, if you are a slightly shorter individual, like my wife, and prefers a frame that's easier to get on, then this would be the one for you. If you are maybe a little bit more challenged in crawling over the frame of a bike, this one would also be the one for you. So regardless of your height, I guess, as long as you're looking for a bike that's easier to mount and dismount, this would be the one for you. Now, when it comes to a bike that is a little bit more traditional, then this would be the one. But in reality, if you're looking for more of a universal fit for just about everyone, then this one might be the better fit, simply because more riders would be able to get on or off the bike. Now, the XP 2.0 has some significant benefits over its predecessor. The biggest one, and probably the most obvious one to see, is the fact that they both now have oil front suspension. So you get really good and very smooth shock absorption versus having like a cheaper coil spring, or, you know, a spring that just doesn't give you that much movement. And when you do get movement with some cheaper coil springs, it's very harsh movement. It's not very fluid. But with the oil front suspension, it's going to give you much, much better overall suspension movement and comfort, which was something that was lacking from the previous model, right? They were really, really fun to ride, but anytime you'd go off a curb or you'd hit bumps, you could really feel it in the handlebars. So a front suspension is absolutely something that I think was needed. All the electronics on this bike are also IP65 rated, so you know, if you have any type of rain or moisture that gets onto it, you don't have to worry as much. Now, you don't want to submerge it, and with any electric bike, you really don't want to ride it if there's like a torrential downpour or if it's really, really wet conditions. You typically want to ride a bicycle when it's dry, or, you know, if there's maybe a small fog or a mist, it'd generally be okay, and that's pretty much for all e-bikes. They've also widened the handlebars, which is really important because the previous handlebars were a bit narrower, and when you have a narrower handlebar, it can sometimes feel as if it's harder to control the bike and get the leverage you need to make turns the way you might feel comfortable. So with a wider handlebar, it widens your grip out a little bit more, makes it a little bit more comfortable, and it's definitely a riding position I think most people will enjoy. Something else they've also done, and you can see it on the front of this bike as well as the front of this bike, is they've added mounting points for all sorts of different accessories. So now you can actually purchase these packages that they've put together. There's three of them. One's called the Comfort Pack, which is a $99 upgrade. They have the Cargo Pack, which is $149, or they have what's called the Comfort Plus Cargo Pack, which is $248. So with the $99 Comfort Pack, you get a giant seat with suspension seat post, which is essentially going to give you kind of like a rear suspension type feel. So basically you'll have kind of a spring post underneath your butt whenever you're riding. If you hit bumps, it just helps absorb that a little bit better. The next one with the Cargo Pack gives you a front rack and a small basket and a large basket. So it's going to give you a really, really great way to add cargo to your e-bikes. So if you use it as like a commuter bike and you need to pick things up from the store, it's an excellent means to do that because you have both front and rear cargo capabilities, which is nice. And if you get the combination of the two packs, which is that $248 package, you get the giant seat, you get the suspension seat post, you get the front rack, the small basket, and the large basket, which is really, really nice. And at $248, it's not a bad deal, considering, in my opinion, this is the best value e-bike you can buy on the market. You heard that right. It's a bold claim to make, but it's absolutely one that I stand behind. At $999 to get an e-bike with shifters and multiple gears is a big story to tell, and it's not something that you can really find, especially from a reputable brand that backs it up with the type of customer service that Lectric does. Now, I've had two of these bikes in their first generation, and they've been absolutely fantastic. The only issue that I had with my very first one was one of the pedals came loose, it started to kind of unthread itself, and at that point somebody rode it and they put too much pressure on it, kind of stripped out that one crank arm, so I had to replace the crank arm. But aside from that, the bikes have been absolutely flawless. One thing I would absolutely recommend is if you get your new e-bike, all you really have to do is put the top of the handlebar post into here and you're done, other than cutting off all the tape and packing foam and everything that protects the bike in transit, which is pretty important because the bikes weigh upwards of about 60 to 65 pounds. But whenever you get your bike completely unloaded, folded out, and ready to go, I would recommend just checking all of your bolts and your connectors and fasteners, because things like that can occasionally come loose, or they might not have been tightened down completely. In the case of these two bikes, they were perfect. But again, the previous two bikes that we had a little bit of an issue with one pedal that after about 4 months, it got a little bit loose and it started working its way out, or unthreading itself, and it caused it to strip out when somebody put a lot of weight on it and was riding it for a while. But those two bikes were prototype versions of the first generation of the Lectric bike, so they may have worked all of that out. But it's always good practice whenever you get a new bike just to kind of check that all your major bolts, especially the ones that hold your wheels on, the ones that hold your pedals and your crank arms on, things like that are just tightened to spec. And you may even want to just take it to a bike shop, pay them 25 bucks and see if they'd be willing to just look over it and make sure it's safe to ride. But aside from that, the bikes are super fun. Again, they have all sorts of really great characteristics to them that work well. I love the new racks that come on the back, and this is definitely a much beefier setup than what came on the first generation. Very robust. The welds are absolutely outstanding on the bike, so very pleased with that. You still get your disc brake setup, and they are mechanical disc brakes, which I would understand. I mean, they work fine for this application, and you're still going to want to bed them in, which means you're going to want to take it out, pick up a little bit of speed, and hit the brakes just so they kind of groove themselves to the rotors and start working better to stop the bike whenever you're going, especially if you're going at a faster speed. They've gone to a slightly narrower tire. So the tires that they had before were, I believe, 4 inches wide. They were super wide tires. And the tires they have now are 3 inches wide. So they're 20 inches in diameter and 3 inches in width. And that's actually kind of a good thing. Sometimes when you have a tire that's too wide, it can make it a little bit harder to maneuver the bike. You feel a little less agile. And with a slightly narrower tire, it's going to give you a bit more, I guess, a tighter feeling whenever you're making your turns. And you still have roughly the same profile to the side of the tire. So the tire is still going to act as kind of a shock absorber as well. And these big fat tires are really comfortable. And I think they give people a little bit more peace of mind, especially if you might be a heavier rider and you just want to have something that feels a little bit more secure with your weight on it. What's also interesting is the relatively low PSI or pressure that you put in these tires. In some cases, you put upwards of 50 to 60 plus pounds worth of PSI inside of these tires. On these, they're 30 PSI max. I inflate them to 28, but you can inflate them to what you feel is comfortable. You definitely don't want to way underinflate them because it can cause major issues, especially if you go over curbs or bumps where something sharp can cause you to get a pinch flat. Essentially, it compresses in all the way and it pinches up against the edge of the rim and it causes a tear or a hole. But aside from that, this is a really cool bike. Now, from a power perspective, or at least from a assist perspective, this is both throttle, which gives you the ability to turn it here to accelerate without pedaling, or pedal assist. And you can kind of run both at the same time if you want. What that essentially means is that if you don't want to pedal at all and you just want to use this thing as kind of like a moped, you can get on the bike, turn it on, and you can simply twist this to go. It will go all the way up to 20 miles an hour and maintain that speed. If you don't want to use the system at all, you can turn it off or turn off power assist, and you can essentially just pedal, and it will act as a traditional bicycle, just a bit of a heavy bicycle. Now, if you want to use pedal assist, you have 3 different pedal assist features in there, and pedal assist in the first 2 will take you up to 20 miles an hour while you're pedaling, and of course that's going to be determined by how hard you're pedaling and what gear you're in. And you can go all the way up to 28 miles an hour if you set it for its level 3 power assist, which is again going to give you the ability for the motor to kick in while you're pedaling. They both have hub motors, which means the motor is placed back here in the hub. It's part of this hub assembly versus some of your really expensive mountain bikes that have the motor placed kind of in the middle right here. But from a value perspective, let's talk about pricing. So bicycles can range from $50 for a super cheap big box bike all the way up to $20,000 for, you know, an ultra high competition professional bike. Typically what most people that get into biking spend would be about $350 up to about $700 at a local bike shop. When you're talking about e-bikes, not regular bikes, not non-powered bikes, but an e-bike, specifically this style of e-bike, you know, typically you're going to look at bikes that start about $400 if you get a super cheap kind of generic bike. That can go all the way upwards of about $5,000 or $6,000. And I'm not talking about mountain bikes. I'm talking about commuter style bikes. For $999, again, you would be hard-pressed to find anything that meets or even comes close to the quality of the Lectric bikes. And I say that because I feel safe when I ride these bikes. Now, I would never take these bikes on like a hardcore mountain bike trail. I would take them on, you know, reasonable trails as long as they didn't have a lot of drops or big bumps or things like that. But basically your smooth, maybe single track style trails or your Jeep trails, but I definitely wouldn't want to take these in any type of hardcore mountain biking. That being said, again, I feel safe on these bikes. I don't feel as if the bike's going to break under my weight. I don't feel as if I'm going to have a component that fails. And that's a pretty big deal for me, because for me to hop off of a bike that costs, you know, upwards of $10,000+ and get on a bike like this and trust it, especially considering the fact that I can get upwards of 28 miles an hour on a bike like this, means a lot. And it's important, because if you don't trust that your bike's capable of performing the task you got it for, you're never going to ride it, or it's just going to sit outside and rust, or you're just not going to care and you're going to waste that money. So at $1,000 to be able to get a bike like this, plus all the different accessories that they offer for it, is really a great value. And there's a lot of folks that have taken their electric bike and upgraded it. They've added different handlebars, they've modified the bike pretty significantly to be able to be more customized to them. And I think that's a big important part of biking, to be able to take something that you like, kind of like a car or an RV, and modify it so it's more your style. And they've done a great job here. From a component perspective, you know, the components that are on here aren't necessarily what I would consider to be bad components. At this price point, they're actually pretty good. You get a Tourney Shimano derailleur here in the back. It has, on the back here, has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 speeds on the back, and it has 1 speed up front. So typically on e-bikes, you're gonna have that single speed up front. But on a lot of times, the more budget e-bikes, you only have a single speed in the back as well. So to have a 7-speed cassette here in the back is really nice. And that's going to give you the ability to have a much more traditional bike feel when you're riding. So if you want to be in a higher or lower gear for different pedaling efforts, you have that capability with a bike like this, which is really nice. This is also going to have both a front and a rear headlight and tail light. So you have the ability to ride at night, or at least ride longer, and if it gets dark on your ride, you have some visibility here. And the front light is actually pretty bright. These pedals are really cool because they fold up and they kind of get out of the way as well, especially when you're going to fold the bike for transport. Coming up here, the way you turn this bike on is you have all your controls right here. You have your screen right here and your shifter right here. This is your throttle. And then you have your brake levers on both sides, which of course control the mechanical disc brakes. And if you're wondering, there's mechanical and hydraulic disc brakes. And mechanical are the less expensive style of brake, but for this application, they're perfectly fine. On the front fork up here, you have the ability to lock it out so it doesn't actually move up and down, and you have the ability to unlock it and have a couple different settings kind of in between depending on where you have this. And that's gonna let you control how much this moves, how stiff it is or soft it is at any given time. So you can kind of dial it in. But to turn the bike on, something you must remember on this model that is a little different than the previous one. It may have been because the previous model that I have was a prototype, but on this one you have a key, and the key fits right under here. You can kind of see it right there. And you can take the key out, it unlocks the battery, so when you split the frame open to fold the bike in half, you slide the battery out if you want to charge it outside of the bike. On the other side here, you can see that you have a little plug hole right here, and this little plug hole gives you the ability to charge the bike while the battery is inside of it. But whenever you lock the battery in place, you have to lock it completely in place and essentially turn it on. Once you've turned it on, you then have the ability to hit the power and turn it on from up here. So this is where you will see your speed, your power assist. So this is going to be what setting you have it in power assist, plus your odometer, which is really nice. And then this right here is your actual battery. So very nice display. You can kind of rotate and shift this display around if you want to get better visibility to it. And then you simply change your power assist levels by pressing the plus sign or the minus sign up here. So I really like what they've done here. This is very, very convenient. They've made this part a little bit more compact, and it just works really well. And that wider grip, again, also works very, very well. From a rider height perspective, what's nice about this one is that you can be anywhere between 4'10" and upwards of like 6'5" to comfortably fit on this bike. This one right here, because it does not have that lower frame, they recommend being, I believe, right at 5 foot all the way up to 6'5". So you have a bit more flexibility again with this white bike with the drop frame, and you can get them in either color as well. But they are very, very cool. I'm gonna go ahead and fold the bikes up so you can kind of see what they look like in their folded or collapsed position. Well, since they both fold up pretty much the same, I kind of set one here folded and the other one in its upright position so you can kind of see the size difference. Makes it significantly more compact. The handlebars kind of fold down to the side and scrunch up against it, and you can actually take the pedals and you can flip them so they're flatter, which means this pedal on this side won't be sticking out quite as much. It's only a small adjustment, and I don't think that really matters whenever you're going to be carrying it inside of a car. But yeah, it gets pretty compact, and if you have a small storage area or in your RV, if you want to put this in the basement, you may be able to. And you can actually drop the seat post down right here, which makes it even more compact. So this, again, is going to fold at a slightly lower point, but it's not, you know, significantly lower. It's not going to make a huge difference in the overall end result. The main difference would be this post right here would be a little bit lower down here. But yeah, that's essentially what it looks like in its folded position. So I could take a couple of these easily and throw them in the back of my wife's Expedition. I could throw these in the back of a Ford Fusion. I mean, there are all sorts of different applications for a bike like this, especially if you're going to be camping and you don't want to keep your bikes outside. So if you have a camper and you don't have a toy hauler and you have limited space, you could easily throw something like this inside. You could wrap it in a towel or a blanket, throw it on your couch, throw it inside of a mid-bunk space, and be able to take two reasonably large bikes, but in a folded configuration, whereas normally you'd have to put them on the back of your RV or you'd have to find a place for them, and it opens them up to getting damaged from the weather or theft. I mean, all sorts of scenarios. And e-bikes, just like regular bikes, are a very, very popular target amongst thieves. So having the ability to fold it up and get it really compact so you can keep it inside and out of the way and out of, you know, peeking eyes, I think is a very, very great feature. Couple that with all of the different accessories you can add to the bike, as well as many more accessories that Lectric offers on their website. You can really customize how you use your bike whenever you're riding it, so it kind of fits your style of riding. But again, don't take these off-roading. I would definitely not take these out on the same trails you would take like a professional mountain bike, or you'd take, you know, even like a $1,500 or $2,000 non-e-bike trail style bike. These are made mainly for pavement. These are made mainly for, you know, riding and commuting around smooth areas. You can take these out on some very, very mild trails, as long as there aren't any big drops or any things that could cause them to bottom out or just damage the bike in general, because you know, these are really designed just for the enjoyment of being able to get out there, go further, have that assistance you might need if you start getting tired or if you just don't feel like pedaling anymore, and being able to get out and explore more. So absolutely love these. I will link these in the description of this video. I'm a huge fan of this product, and I've tested them for a long time. I've used them for a long time. Shoot, I've let family members borrow the ones that we've had, and it's hard to get them back because they just enjoy using them so much. Anyways, guys, I sure hope you enjoyed this video. We're going to take these out. I'm going to do it in another video because there's so much to go over in these overview videos that I don't want to kind of mix the two. I can set up an entire separate video of taking these out and riding them. And who knows, we might actually take these out to Padre Island and ride them out on the beach, because I think that's a perfect use for a bike like this. Anyways, guys, if you haven't had a chance, please take a moment, subscribe to my channel, give me a thumbs up, and we'll talk to you again very soon.